that's what the movement missed. The movement missed, like, we needed Malcolm to be a businessman. We needed Malcolm to be Hove. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need Hove to be Malcolm.
Let's get it started.
Double O.
Free range, motherfucker. Yeah. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Free Range Podcast with your boy Double O. You may know me as the light-skinned dude in Kids in the Hall. You may know me as the light-skinned dude behind Lupe Fiasco on tour. Or you may just know me as the dude that Busta Rhymes plays when he puts on whiteface in all his videos. But I'm here to hopefully provide some inspiration, some big ideas, hopefully some different content than what you've been used to. First episode. These are all test episodes right now until I figure out really what the format is. I think that it's going to definitely evolve as the name suggests. And so the more feedback I get from you guys, the more I get to actually bang out podcasts. I think the better the synergy and energy between the two of us will be, and we'll get to a place where we're just knocking these shits out the park. I had to bring one of my close homies on because he was the first person to even approach me about doing a podcast at all. We had both moved out to LA at around the same time. He ended up leaving not too long after, which you'll find out. But wanted to bring my man Netic on. He is an artist, as he describes himself, a digital mystic, content creator, curator, a priest. He really is somebody that I admire and someone that I'm constantly intrigued to talk to, not only because he shares very similar ideas of the world as I do, but he also is willing to constantly push boundaries, always learn. And if you followed him as the frontman of Game Rebellion or on Instagram at Netic, then you know that he consistently provides context for an ever-changing, ever-crazy, and ever-radical world. I think the whole point of the podcast is to start in a hip-hop space, start in a space as an artist, but really expand our conversations and our capacity to see the world through the lens of hip-hop and what it can mean for the future. So check it out, my man Netic. You can follow him on Instagram at Netic. Make sure you subscribe so you can get more of the Free Range podcast, and let's get to it. Check 1 2 1 2. It's Double O, and this is motherfucking the first podcast. People have been forcing me to do it. This man Netic has been forcing me to do it for like almost 4 years.
It's 4 years, dog.
We had an idea, kind of, but it took me a little while to figure it out.
You had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, but I figured you needed to be the first person on the couch because this was our idea when we started it. So.
I appreciate it. I appreciate being here.
No problem. So what's been up? First of all, I haven't seen you in a long ass time.
Yeah, yo. What's going on? How are you? How you been?
Good. I'm good.
You look good. You look lean.
Thank you. I've been trying. Been doing my mix of eating real ass food and intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And then I realized I got skinny fat. I just dropped the weight. Yeah. So then it was like, okay, let me figure out the balance.
I'm usually intermittent fasting like all the time.
Oh no, I do it all the time too. Like it was the first thing that I've ever attempted in terms of like trying to manage weight that 100% I was like, oh, this shit is for real. Like this is actually like something that can actually be built into the lifestyle that I didn't think I had before. Because everything else was just kind of like, what I realized coming from athletics is just that like you don't necessarily get good habits when you're eating 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day because you're burning however many thousands of calories, and then there was no after plan. It was like once I stopped running track, it was just like, okay, now what?
Yeah, I think I mean, that's 100% for sure. You also can eat anything, or you feel like you can eat anything, because you're working so hard, or and putting out so much energy that like anything that you put in, you burn. So essentially, you're like a DeLorean, right? You could just like burn garbage. Remember?
No, it's real.
And Doc was dumping the trash
yo,
into the DeLorean.
When I was
Where we're going, there are no roads.
My Olympic year, we would at least 2 or 3 times a month, because we were training out on the west side of Santa Monica. We would go to Soup Plantation and just go, like our coach would take us and we would just go ham. And that shit is just like
just eat anything.
Carb overload because you're like, oh yeah, you got salad, but then you have entire pizzas and whole things of bread and lasagna and whatever. It would just be like, yeah, I need all of this because I just burned however many. But yeah, IF has been the first thing that's just been like, oh yeah, I didn't need to eat all that food. That's what the problem was. I was actually,
It's also crazy for people who think that they can't not eat for an extended period of time, or they're gonna like not have energy and all that shit. And I'm just like, one, I have way more energy than you, and I'll rip your arm out off your body. And it's just like, and it'll be like, no, I couldn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like just as soon as you say that you can't do it, I'm just like, yeah, you can't do it because you believe that. But it's not so difficult when you start thinking about it objectively, and you start thinking like, actually, there's plenty of times when I don't eat for 16 hours straight.
You slept and you didn't die.
Yeah, you slept 6 hours, and then you got and then all you had to do was like not eat for another 10 hours and you'd be good, right? Like you wouldn't be that hard. Or sleep for 8 hours and then not eat for another 8 hours. It's actually much easier than people think. I fast. I do a full day, 24-hour fast once a week, about once a week on average. Sometimes I'll do a 48-hour fast, and it's also, it has the same effect that like the way intermittent fasting did with me. It was just like, at first I'm like, do I feel like doing that today? And then I'm like, actually, I already haven't eaten for 18 hours anyway.
Yeah.
I can just finish it. I can just fucking chill out.
That's definitely been the big thing. It's also extremely affordable because then you just are like, you're like, yeah, I'm just not going to eat today. Like it's just simple. I just saved like however much money living in LA I would have spent on three or four meals. So let's circle back a little bit, because part of the reason that I haven't fucking seen you in years, other than catching up with you on Instagram, is because you've been in a ton of places, not always this country. Yeah.
I do a lot of traveling.
And Netic and I, years ago, he told me that he was essentially trying to create a Central American compound and this is well before the Trump era, to escape basically the tyranny of America. Have you succeeded? How can I be down if you have? And otherwise, if not, like what's been going on? Because I see construction going on. I see a lot of palm trees and
So, well, what I've learned is that you can't really escape globalization, right? And it doesn't really matter where you go. You might be a bit further outside of the ripple effect, but eventually it's going to catch up. It's going to catch up to you and it's going to get to you. I've traveled a lot of places in that time period, so I'm trying to figure out like where it should be, from Costa Rica, Hawaii, Philippines, Mexico, which essentially ended up like being Mexico, navigating through what is possible there and what that can look like and what the dollar can do in Mexico comparatively to what it can do in other countries. Excuse me. So it's become like one of those things that I've had to like sort of learn about economics and follow the market trends and like know when to convert my money so that I can get the bit. Like seriously, like 2 weeks ago, I got an extra 50 pesos on the dollar comparatively to this week. I mean, yeah. So it's like one of those things that, 50 cent of the, but it's one of those things where, which is a lot, right? Like you get, these things start to convert and you start making a lot of, sorry about that. I'll turn that off. You start making a lot more money just by converting at particular times and knowing that like Tuesday is the day that you should check to see if the conversion rate's going to go down, because you learn, you like that's when it usually goes up. So I started, I had to have like a crash course in like global economics and global policy, and then like business and interest rates and banks, and which was completely out of what I was really trying to do, because I was like trying to get away from all of that.
You were like, no, I just want
to live in the woods. Like I'm just trying to live in the jungle with a knife, and like and just have a cool place to like live,
escape.
And, yeah. And I still, and I also have the internet. And then I said, okay, well, that's not what this is, and I really need to understand that everywhere that I went, everywhere that I traveled, I saw the impact of globalization and what that was doing to communities. It wasn't just gentrifying Brooklyn, where I'm from. It was gentrifying the entire world in a way, and not necessarily where it was like, white people moving in. It was more so along the idea of like white value systems, moving through spaces and sweeping through spaces, and that, even in Toronto and areas where like it's Chinese, like infiltrating areas and coming through, but they're coming through with a very capitalist mindset, which essentially is Western European, and it's just like they kind of come in and do their version of imperialism.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's happening here around USC. Families were basically using houses as like savings accounts, and they would just buy stuff for their children to potentially go to USC or UCLA years down the road.
Yeah.
And so you have all of these now Chinese families just buying up stuff, and they were buying in cash, so they're raising the prices and bidding wars and all that sort of stuff.
Well, there's a million reasons why it's problematic, but it's particularly problematic for people who are in real estate, because when you're trying to buy a house and you're looking for a deal, and with me, the real estate that I'm involved in is like residential, so we do multi-unit stuff, whatever. But I'm looking for a good deal, something that I can fix up and that I can turn around and and the cap rate is gonna I'm gonna make some money on my return on my investment every month. I'll get a good cap rate. So they don't actually care about any of that. They'll actually, even if they spend a little bit more money than it's even worth, it doesn't matter, because their money's actually not really worth. They know that it's not really worth anything globally, or in China. So they're just like, whatever, let's get this money, put it into this bank. I don't even need to like fix the air neighborhood.
Yeah,
I don't need to do anything to it. I don't even
anything.
care. I don't care if anyone lives there or not, or if 8 of my relatives live there, and it doesn't even matter. It's purely about me having the money, the equity in this, space, so that I know that I can always sell that, and those dollars are real. They did a lot of that in Detroit. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to some people about what's going on in Detroit. I was a part of the most ridiculous concert that not only has happened this year, but has potentially happened in the last like 10 years. So Lupe and I get a call, and it's like, they want you to do a show in Puerto Rico. And it's to raise money. This was like March. So this is not too long after the hurricane.
Right.
So it's they just wanted to do something that was uniting. It was free in their stadium, because it was it was like a telethon thing before it. So it was free to the people of Puerto Rico, but they still were like doing raising money stuff.
Like Live Aid?
Yeah, basically. So it was...
No, Live Aid wasn't free though. It was expensive.
It was us, Lupe, right? it was Akon, Busta Rhymes, French Montana, Talib Kweli, Mos Def, Jay Electronica, Black Thought, Dead Prez. Your boy helped organize this. Bazaar Royale.
Oh, word?
He hosted. Him and Angela Yee hosted. And who else was in it? Wiseman Yandel, B.O.B. Basically ridiculous, like a ridiculous lineup. The fact that Jay Electronica and Mos Def would show up anywhere to get to be able to even get all that together. Oh, Ghost and Ray.
Nice.
Yeah. So all of this. So no one believed it was real. We were like, every single person that you talked to there was like, oh, this is not this is not a real thing.
Right.
Like they were paying respectably. I'm pretty sure they paid everybody's full rate. No negotiation. Just basically like a week and a half before, everyone was like, yeah, this is what we got. This is our rate. Cool, we got it. Boom, flying everybody out first class. Boom. But when I got there, I was having a conversation with Jay Electronica and Angela Yee about it because Jay had been in and out of Detroit for a while. Angela Yee, I know, is investing in Detroit. Yeah. And I just definitely drunk. But I was just like, if it's that cheap, we have to buy up as much as possible because someone's going to.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's gonna happen. And when I last time I was on tour, we got a chance to go into Motown like really early. And like everything around Motown is abandoned for blocks and blocks and blocks. And beautiful. This is not just like, oh, these are shitty houses. These are like, if you are a fan of mid-century to early century, just, four squares, Victorians, like just awesome, American whatever houses. Classic American architecture. Just sitting around. Just nothing in them. Nothing's going on, boarded up. And I'm like, this is one of those cities that Amazon should have gone to, but it's one of those things where I feel like, especially for all the hip hop people that were there, it's just like at a certain point, the mentality needs to change. Where if we're going to exist in a capitalist structure, then we need to actually use it to our advantage.
Oh, I literally was just having this conversation with Sycamore. Shout outs to Sick. On my DM, he was saying basically that I need to be the Malcolm to the people. He was like, "We need you, right?" And I was like, "Listen," he's like, "But you're busy being a businessman," and I'm like, "That's what the movement missed." The movement missed, like, we needed Malcolm to be a businessman. We needed Malcolm to be Hove. You know what I'm saying? Like and we need Hove to be Malcolm in those ways. And I think Hove is actually much closer than,
I think he's slowly understanding and shifting that.
Yeah.
And you can do it once again, if you're going to play the game.
You don't even really have a choice. Like, it's one of those things where you can complain about the circumstances and the situation that you're in, right? But the waves are still crashing. Like, so if I'm in the ocean and I'm just talking about the issues that I'm having with the ocean, it's like, it doesn't matter. I'm still in the ocean, right? So it's like, do I want to surf or do I want to chill in a yacht? Do I want to have a rowboat? Do I want to have a sailboat? And these things are all options. Or do I want to have a raft? Or do I want to drown? Like, These are all options for navigating the ocean. It's really just up to you and seeing like what you're comfortable with. And for me, I've just gotten to a point where I've read, and you've known me for a very long time. I've been on my quest in regards to like my own spirituality since my grandmother, my mother. I was raised in this in a very different way. So I've, my meditations, my like martial arts, the studying, the reading. I don't read an Osho book and learn anything. I learn their articulations of ideas that I know. I don't read a Deepak Chopra book and learn anything. I learn their articulations of ideas that I already know. I don't, Alan Watts, I don't read and go, amazing. I didn't know that. I read and I say, this is so beautiful. Like, it's such a beautiful articulation of an idea that you already had, right?
I think a lot of it is that sometimes,
And that's ego, right? It's like it's ego to me to continue reading those things, like, and just reiterating ideas that I've already had and feeling like, yeah, I got it from this guy who also I really respect. It's like getting patted on the back by someone that you look up to, you know.
Yeah.
But I started reading business books, and I started reading the entrepreneur books, and I started reading sort of these like real estate books and real estate investment and economic books. Everything was new.
Yeah, you're like, oh,
I don't know anything.
yeah.
I'm like, I have no idea what these people are talking about.
I don't know.
So there's a
this
complete
terminology,
blind
yeah.
spot, right? Like a complete, total, utter blind spot for me in regards to, it's not like reading history or not like reading, you know, like even science. In 2016, I was in a tremendous amount of think tanks in Silicon Valley. It wasn't like reading their papers and their white papers, you know, like it was very different. So for me, I was like, holy shit, like I'm learning again, like really learning. So I became invigorated and really excited by that, and
Signed up for Bigger Pockets.
I did sign up for Bigger Pockets.
I already know.
Absolutely.
You're like, I need to get all of it from everybody.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
Every single day. Every single day I'm on Bigger Pockets, reading Mr. Mustache. I read their stuff too. But also there's something interesting in all of that too. A lot of those people are minimalists. So they're like accumulating wealth in a very different space, right? For they're like accumulating wealth, but they're seeing how minimal they can live, how frugal they can be, where they can cut things, like where they can save, where they can. So I'm like, whoa, my idea of wealth accumulation for so long was in terms of consumerism.
Yeah,
because that's where we come from, right?
Exactly.
We come from this culture of consumerism, and anything that is an expression of wealth in the hood is like ownership of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was like my idea of like wealth being whack was just because it was just like, it's just like more shit. You know what I'm saying? And then there was a time where I was like, oh, that's not really even wealth.
Yeah.
Like now
That's
I'm
just
like,
being rich.
yeah, it's like, oh, okay. And obviously my circumstances are like, you know, much different than everybody else's. Me and my brother worked like really hard, and, you know, in the world that we were both in, and my brother became a very successful athlete, and I was, you know, successful in the music industry, and so I mean, our lives changed considerably, but then it went from like, yeah, but that's not like enough. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean like not enough money. I mean, it's not enough because with the money that we've made, it's like, it's more than enough to just sustain, to like just live.
Yeah.
But what I mean is it's not enough in regards to an approach that's going to affect the lives of others, right? Like I without a model of, without a financial model for that has the ability to impact the world, then I'm just, whatever. I'm just basically just a rich guy or a wealthy guy, like, or my, you know, my
which
brothers
is
are just
which
rich
is fine if that's what you want to be.
I'm not
but
rich, by the way. I'm not a rich guy.
But I feel like there has always been, and I know it's been inherent for obviously everything that you do, whether it be through Game Rebellion and past it, is you can't just be rich. You can't just be like, oh yeah, this is enough. I'm just sitting here in this house by myself, just rich and just sitting here chilling. Like, it has to be, it's no fun if you can't bring your friends along in a way that makes them all, everybody feel empowered and
valuable.
Yeah. And also just figuring out if you can also just, you know, it's not a bad project to figure out how to fix the world, even in a small way, along the way.
Well, I've always been like, as long as you know me, I've been on some fuck the system shit, right?
Oh, 100%.
But just because I genuinely think the system is broken. It's not from a place of like, okay, hold on. I take that back. The system isn't broken at all. The system is working exactly how it was designed to work.
Yeah, for specific people.
Yeah, for very specific people. It is working at like optimum efficiency. It's running like exactly how it's supposed to be. I just think that this is a shitty system.
Yeah.
Moving forward, right? Like and for particularly people that look like you and I, it's not a great system for. It's not a great system for poor white people who there are millions and millions of.
100%.
It's not a great system for like it's not a great system for people, for most people. So I've been thinking a lot about like how I articulate solutions around things that I've recognized to be problematic, because I've always been good at like pointing out the holes, and I'm like, okay, well, what do you fill those holes with? So for me, it's one of the thoughts that I have in regards to just like, okay, how do you create change in systems that essentially are just like in this big giant circle jerk where like it's like the same thing repeated over and over again, and people are like all upset about Trump, and I'm like, oh, okay, really? Like it's irrelevant. Like this shit is irrelevant. So my position on on wealth accumulation and growth and economic development is really comes from a place of like, how do we implement new systems that, I mean, I think democracy is a farce, except for in spaces of like apps and like Yelps, like, where you're literally just like, you're just a person clicking stars and things like that. So how do you democratize some systems that can be used and empower people? For example, a lot of people have a hard time with like understanding, like how to contribute to a community and how to create community growth and economic growth within a community. But they don't understand, like, I mean, they do understand like numbers. Like they understand once you tell them how many people live in a community, like if you have a community of 10,000 people, if each person gave $2, that's $20,000, right? Like, so if each person in a community of 10,000 people gave $2 every month, that's fucking that's $20,000. That's $20,000 a month. You've got $240,000 at the end of the fucking year. That's a tremendous amount of money that can be done with something. And that's just like, that's $2, right? And $2 is not a lot of money.
No, of course.
But the problem with that is that the access of getting 10,000 people to move in a particular way seems very difficult until you look at the numbers that apps do, right? Like until you look at like how many people disliked or liked an app, then you're like, holy shit! All these people bought the app, first of all, and then all these people went and fucking like said that they liked it or disliked it and then told you why. It's like, so people are like comfortable from their home doing things. They're comfortable from their phone doing things. So if you can make the hack convenient, or applicable in a way that's like doesn't actually take them outside of themselves, you can probably get them to do something, right? Yeah. So if we can create, and I mean, if you can create, I don't know, I'm trying to give away like all the things that I'm working on. I don't want it's proprietary technology that I'm working on here. But if you can create sort of opportunities for financial, like sort of land banks, where people can say, hey, the whole community is investing, and every year or every quarter of a year, we're gonna fund a business when that business is gonna get $50,000 in startup money, and that we're gonna like pick the best business idea, and that best business idea is gonna go through through our app's rigorous blah blah blah, where you punch in all the numbers in your business plan and all that shit, and algorithmically it talks about the areas and it asks you a bunch of questions, and it comes out with what we think are the top 5 business plans or top 10 business ideas, and then the people vote on them, and then one business gets the fucking chance to open up in the community of that 10,000 people, right? Yeah. So that's a way to like infuse the money and keep the money moving and circulating within the community, and also outside money happening and money being saved, and business is obligated to give a percentage of its earnings back into that same thing, right? So you can essentially gentrify your own community by being involved in the community, which is why I opened the cafe the way that we did in Brooklyn. I wanted to get ahead of the gentrification that was happening, but in a way that changed the conversation, because I knew that my design capabilities and eyes with my partner Hugo was greater than anybody that was coming into the community. Yeah. So I'm like, we already have the design skills, we already have the history, we have the ability to design something beautiful. We should do it first. And now we set the template for what the neighborhood can look like. white people don't beautify neighborhoods. Like they don't come into neighborhoods and beautify them. They just come into neighborhoods with a level of care because it's an investment for them. So they're bringing what they care about to the neighborhood, right? But if we cared about whatever, we could do the very same thing.
It was either NPR or there's a podcast, There Goes the Neighborhood. And they were talking about Highland Park. I don't know if you've been out there. It's like past Mount Washington, like almost going up towards Pasadena. But, they talked about how how the real estate agents conspired to create gentrification on purpose. Like what they did was they saw one or two renovated houses in the area. They were like, oh, this could be a place. Because it was kind of like the next place after Silver Lake. There was just nothing else between Silver Lake and Pasadena except here. So they bought a house across from the house that was renovated that house, and then they invested in someone locally who wanted to start. The real estate agents invested in the first cafe, like coffee shop on the block, so that they could easily just say like, sell that house by being like, you see the house across the street? Like the neighborhood's turning. They renovated. This house was renovated. Take them over to the coffee shop because that's the place where you sit down and seal the deal. Is once they're there, and that little bit of stuff is what begins this whole change. So you're right. Like it does take. Some people see it because it's obviously more of a machine, but it does take simple things. It's like, oh yeah, now you have a meeting. Now you have a town square, and even on the once it's like simple shit.
The crazy shit to me is that like the things that, I mean, this is like almost like some Willie Lynch, shit, right? Where it's like the things that. And obviously every white person in America didn't have slaves or anything like that. Yeah. But the thing that white people, and I mean like the wealthy people, not because poor white people weren't white people. Yeah. I mean like the thing that people were worried about was communication between slaves, communication between blacks and Irish, communication between blacks and Jews and Irish. And it was like communication and their ability to organize around that communication. Like 100%. What are they going to talk about? And then what are they going to do with what they talk about?
Because they outnumber us.
Right. So it's like, what are they going to do about this? And now it's good to me, it's so interesting because it's almost like the Willie Lynch sort of idea that, for those of you who don't know what Willie Lynch is, you should Google it, maybe put it in the show notes or something. Yeah. Do a little work. Come on. I have issues with it, but it's fun. It's not real.
I know.
But point is, it's a good idea. It's a good ideology in regards to like, well, maybe it is real. I don't know, whatever. But more so, it's a good ideology around how sort of like something perpetuates itself, right? 100%. An idea perpetuates itself to the point where you don't even actually need the chains anymore. Like they don't even need to stop the communication. It's like, oh no, now they can communicate freely. Because they're gonna give them phone phones because they're not going to talk about anything. They're not going to organize shit. They're not going to do anything because we just make niceties affordable enough to distract them. Like the distractions are so deeply woven and ingrained into the being of these devices and our daily interactions that we don't actually ever get to a way where like, okay, cool. So what are we going to do? Like we're just mad that we saw some kid get shot. And you're like, well, what do we do about that? And they were like, we get angry. And I'm like, yep.
Now what?
Already angry, been angry about that. What are we going to do about it? Like, where are we going to go with this, and how are we going to do it? And so for me, I'm, again, like I said with the cafe, I didn't feel like I couldn't make a place beautiful, or it's like, what the fuck? We white people moving into the neighborhood. Yeah. I was like, oh shit, it might be white people moving in this neighborhood. I better get ahead of that because there's nothing that they can do that I can't do.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, I can do more things than they can do because I can go into spaces that they can't go into, right? Like, and I know that there's obviously spaces that they can go into or loans that they can get that I can't get or things that or interest rates. Like I just read something that said that black real estate per square foot is still like way less than white real estate just because of how they appraise, how someone comes through and appraises it just because they see that it's black owned, which is essentially like redlining. And the things that those are the real racisms that people should be talking about, not sort of like not when someone says something racist on Twitter. That's not racism. That's just prejudice. Like there's no power in that. The power is in how do you keep people from actualizing their their truest potential and their fullest fulfillments. That's racism, not like, not someone calling somebody something. For me though, I think that this is the first time that I'm like, well, this is what it is.
So what we do?
What are we going to do about it to make it something else? Like, you have to accept what it is so that you can work towards what it can be.
Yeah. So can we talk about what's happening in the other city that is not New York, or is that too early?
In Philly?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I've been thinking
I have no
heavy
about
about Philly lately, just because obviously my connection to it going to Penn, but also just in thinking about, I've stopped thinking about real estate I need to own a house to have a place to live space.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, so one of those things is, because of all my travels, I don't really live anywhere, right? Like, I invest time in areas to achieve things. So my time in LA, when I first got to LA, I came out here because I had a development deal for a television show. I mean, for a show that I created. And for the time period that they had the show, it didn't happen. I liked LA, and because I was here, for the show, I had a cool little creative director job, and I was able to train jujitsu. And I'm like, perfect. I got some paper, I got the show bubbling, and I'm able to do jujitsu. I fucking love martial arts. Perfect. And then I was like, I'll be here. Oh, I'm gonna compete next year. I'll compete for nationals. I'll train for nationals. Hopefully, I'll win nationals. I win nationals. Cool. Now I can But another opportunity came, and it's like, okay, I have to travel. I have to do this. Like, I have to go to Tulum. I have to start figuring this out. I'm in Tulum for the time period that I'm in Tulum to figure out what is needed for me to execute and achieve Tulum. And then the cafe needed my presence for a while. So I'm like, okay, I got to leave Tulum. I did what I needed to do Tulum. I need to leave and go to New York for a while and work on what I got to do in New York. And I'm able to do this. Obviously, I don't have any children, so I'm able to do it. That in and of itself created this sort of realization as like, oh, I don't really have to live anywhere, right? Like, I can just be spaces enough to achieve things. And that's essentially what created that sort of like living out of the backpack, which made other things possible, right? Because again, once you have roots, things do change.
Oh no, definitely. And I mean, it's always something to think about. But at the same time, until your kids are in school, right? They don't have to change, right?
Oh, my nieces think they have houses all over the world.
Exactly.
They're like, "Are you coming? Are you going to come to our Mexico house? Or are you going to come to?" Like, they really talk like that.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I mean, it's one of the things that I, riding from the airport after a show in Chicago, and was in this was probably like 4:30 in the morning, riding to O'Hare, Uber driver, and he's just like, yeah. He's like, "Are you own a house?" I was like, no, not yet. I live in LA, expensive, yada, yada. He was like, yeah. He was like, if you buy a house, don't live in it. Because he was like, it's not an investment. He was just like, I own multiple houses. I have a job. And he was like, I do this only to pay for my vacations. He was like, I separate all of the things for different parts. And he's like, so if I want to go on a vacation, I get in the Uber, ride around for, whatever, make the money that I want for, that year. And then that's just vacation play money. And then I have all this other stuff. Obviously, all the investments are for, long term. And then the job is the regular deal with money every single day. And I think that, we're in this space now where like people should definitely be thinking about those things, instead of requiring because that's to me more than the kid thing is what it is. You don't have a lot of things. You don't have the things that way it's like, oh, I got the car. Where am I going to put the car? Where am I going to, where am I going to put this stuff that I have?
Yeah, I have a car. Luckily, I have a brother who like has a driveway. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I definitely recognize that I have stuff, and I also have. It's crazy because I have companies that send me more stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I
And
saw you in your fucking fear of God Nikes the other day.
They're amazing.
I'm like, I've talked to Jerry a few times. It seems so obvious, but to do something so simple is to just be like, yeah, you guys need a new silhouette, like, and like a good one. Like, let's just start there. Like, stop with all of this. Like, it was just, but yeah. Well, because the less stuff that you acquire, that was the part of me even downsizing. I was just like, I need to get rid of it. I just got too much stuff. And it is keeping me from moving forward. Because what I realized is once you settle in, once you build a really comfortable life, that shit is just, like, I just don't want to leave and move, and I'm really comfortable and I have all these things, but I'm not making those extra strides to really move where I feel like I should be forward. And I don't want to look back and just be like, as I approach 40, I don't want to look back and be like, man, I should have made that decision X amount.
Yeah. I read I can't remember if it was in Elon Musk's biography, or if it was in an article or something. It was talking about one of his friends has like a modest home up in the Bay somewhere, and he goes, because he's always up there, he goes there like twice a week, and he has like the guest room, and he just like stay, like he'll just go there and like play video games and crash, like that's where his nights will be, and he won't like do a hotel, and he won't like just buy a house there even though he's there 2 times a week or 3 times a week. He's like, what for? Like I'm good. And that's like when you're worth like, those type of dollars, and you're still not comfortable, like you choose to not be comfortable. That's why they're able to like keep going and keep pushing.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why I started this podcast is because I've been noticing a lot of stuff, being on the road with Lupe, knowing people like you, just getting older, that like as hip hop is evolving into this next phase, and there's still going to be the basics. We all come from just trying to make some fun shit that we liked and whatever. But as we evolve into this next phase, it's just like, it's always been the language of opportunity, but now it's like, what do we do with that opportunity now as we're moving in? It can be smarter. It can be, capitalist in an empathetic way, if that's even possible. We had to take a little beat interlude. If you're still rocking with us, thank you. Make sure you subscribe. Free Range Podcast, where all your favorite podcasts are, Also want to make sure you subscribe to Netic's podcast as he readies a second season. This message will self-destruct. Catch up on the first season if you haven't. Now back to the convo.
I think coding is the most important language that you can teach your children, right? Like I did a workshop, a think tank group at NYU last year. That's something called Afro-Techtopia, and I asked the room what the most important language in the world was, and everybody was like Mandarin. And most people thought Mandarin or Chinese was the most Cantonese was the most important language in the world. And I told them, I was like, Python is the most important language in the world. And the fact that I'm at a tech conference speaking,
you don't know that, yeah.
Nobody said that is crazy to me, and I still stand by that. For those of you who are listening, Python is a code language, computer code language, and it's the one that's running everything right now. And probably will for a little while until they invent something better and more new, and that'll be the new language that you have to learn. But for me, that's super duper important that we understand that coding creates some serious neutral playing field for a lot of people, right? Because good coders, you can't tell you can't tell the color of a coder by reading their code, right? Like you might be able to tell the coder based on what that code does or based on whatever, but you can't tell the color of a person based on their coding. So it's going to be very hard to be racist against coders. It's going to be very hard to create so I think technology works in our favor in that way, in the favor of poor people, because the technological revolution is a revolution that everyone has access to. This is the first industry that everybody has access to because they all have means to operate within it. Whereas the Industrial Revolution, everybody did not have access to fucking steel or like nobody had that shit. Nobody was able to do what was happening or filament or anything or the light bulb or any of that shit.
Yeah.
People just couldn't do that. You couldn't just like pop up and be fucking Henry Ford. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you needed to have different infrastructure, and now it literally is in the same way that, I mean, it's the new inversion of hip hop, of basketball, of whatever. It's
100%. You can freestyle.
Yeah,
like it's going to get to that point where you're in a space where literally you can do some shit that no one can stop you from doing. And with cloud computing and cloud storage and all these things, you're going to be able to write code. You're going to be able to write code on a laptop that that you got from your school that was a shitty laptop and store it in the cloud, and then be able to and when you get your own laptop, restart working on it again. Literally, it's like having notes in the air, so it is an equalizer, and it's the first time that really a little bit of the level of the playing field is leveled and people are able to step in and work from that space. If you're able to see it, if you don't act on it, you can't. It's going to be very hard for us to.
But I think that's always the issue, though, don't you think? It's not just because like right now we're dealing in I'm a much like you the weird old school man's man. I saw you hanging fucking drywall the other day. Yeah. I watch a lot of This Old House and all that sort of stuff.
You come over and hang some of that drywall with me.
You didn't ask.
Oh, is that it?
And there are like, what they say, 6 million unfilled like trades jobs in the country right now, like carpenters, plumbers, electricians.
And people have no idea how much those.
Yeah,
dude,
that's what I'm saying.
If I knew what I know now in high school, I would have definitely gone to BOCES or one of the tech school, whatever.
But what I'm saying is like there are a ton of people that just don't know and don't connect the dots. Like, oh no, that's not only entrepreneurial, but that's a 6-figure salary working on your own time, doing whatever.
$250 an hour.
And so I think part of it has to also be building around the ideas of these cultural centers and places, maybe even in some of the buildings that you're doing, thinking about being like, yo, we're going to do a community night in the whatever space, and just literally be able to just say like, hey, we got these computers out. Like, let's just learn about the basics. There's a guy down in, out by USC that takes high risk kids that are not doing well in math and reading and teaches them how to code. And at like 10 or 12. And then, everything raises from that point.
Yeah, of course.
But it's literally just like, oh yeah, just whatever ideas you have at 10 or 12, you're like, oh, I want to make this thing, and puts them in teams, learns all this stuff. They're learning how to fucking program drones. They're doing all this amazing things. But if the conversation never gets there, then you don't know that, and that's part.
It's
and that's
rough.
Part.
We got to own that, right? Because there's there's nobody that doesn't know that Google exists. So if you aren't a curious person, that's really on you.
Yeah, but there's one thing to say no one knows. People are really good at. People know the TV's on, electricity's on. No one's thinking like, oh, well, how does that happen? No one's thinking about the plant that's running, this, or the wind turbines out by, in the Palm Desert that are doing, whatever. They're just like,
but
oh,
somebody
it's on.
is. Right.
Somebody is.
So that's my thing is that, right, at some point you can't really
stop being rappers, go be electricians. Or be a rapper and an electrician.
Yeah, be a rapper and an electrician, right? Like learn. The reason I know how to the design shit, the reason why I understand design work is because when I would come off of tour, I would go to my boy Hugo McLeod's workshop and build things with him. And then every once in a while, he'd be like, yo, how long are you here for? And I'd be like, oh, I'm not going out on tour for like another couple months. And he'd be like, oh, I have this project that I need help with. Do you want to help me with this project? So I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I got to teach you how to weld to do it. And I'm like, awesome.
Okay, yeah.
Cool. You know what I mean? So it was like, yeah, I was a fucking rapper and learning how to weld and
Well,
learning.
I think what's been lost and what shouldn't be lost and what I've been trying to reiterate, hip hop and the technological revolution of the last 35, 40 years go hand in hand, right?
Absolutely.
Inherently, we are the ultimate tinkerers and hackers.
Mhm.
There were motherfuckers that were sitting in the projects that was like, yo, we got to get electricity and we have to get a way to do this, to make this thing do something that it wasn't designed to do.
Right.
This turntable, this record, this mixer, all these things. Like when you start going back and you start talking to Grandmaster Flash, people like that, like they were halfway, they were electricians, they were dealing in circuitry.
Listen, the only reason I know how to take things apart was because I wanted stuff. Right? Like I wanted a stereo system so I could listen to hip hop, and a stereo system broke in my house, and my parents were gonna throw the shit out, and I was like, hey, can I have that? And they were like, it's broken. And I was like, cool, can I have that? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, perfect. And I had to, save my money and go to Radio Shack and buy tools to take things apart, and then be like, I don't know what's wrong with this thing. I got to figure it out. And, and figured it out. And then I wanted a TV. So I was like, oh, I found a broken TV. Let me see if I can. But it was only because I did that. But I'm just a very curious person, right? Which is my gift and my curse, is that, I really enjoy learning things, which also makes it difficult when something becomes monotonous for me. I'm like, I'd rather learn something else, than just be here doing this same thing. So sometimes it's I don't see things all the way through to to the space that people would like me to, because I'm like, yeah, I was here for the learning. I wasn't here to actually.
Yeah, I've done. My album is done. It's done. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah. I'm done. I don't have to promote it or anything.
Yeah.
But that was sort of one, I've learned that about myself. And now, the first half of my life was spent doing that, and, very much in the spiritual and metaphysical space. And now I'm taking what I learned in the esoteric world, and how in the world of thought and creation, and now how to manifest an empire build down here, and recognizing that, yeah, I'm going to be a force because of what I learned in the ethereal, and now I'm able to bring it here. And I also have the support systems of people who were successful and have seen me be successful in multiple spaces. So now I'm like, oh, we can really do this. But I'm on some Peaky Blinders shit.
No.
I'm on some Shelby shit.
My whole thing is, again, I feel like as we move into this next phase, whatever it is, I think that people need to expand from the beginning. And that's, what I want this to be, is from the beginning, understand you can be a fan and you can be a participant in the culture 100%. But what the culture can do now is so there's no reason to not be in hip hop and be a coder, not be in hip hop. The homie Michael Ford, hip hop architect, he uses the language and the understanding of hip hop in order to inform his architectural designs. I think the biggest thing is just America's fly because of the black people in it, right? Because of the immigrants and the black people in it.
Black
America
and brown
is fly.
people, immigrants,
and
make
the
America
conversation for the last 40 years is built. Everything is around hip hop, whether people realize it or not. Whether there's a frat boy saying, "Yo, I've been in line with two girls from Orange County," and it's just they're like, "Yeah, sometimes you got to do you," and it's just that they don't understand where that came from, but the language, the terminology, everything about it
all the language.
And so for me now, it's just let's expand this conversation to not only just break open what you think you can be in it, but what you can give back being, right? Like it doesn't, like no matter what you do, you can't disassociate your upbringing, your understanding, being a rapper, all of that stuff, whether in real estate or whatever, from what has happened before in the rap space, in the hip hop space, right? The cities, when you touch down, you're thinking, like when you're in Philly, you're not, you're not thinking about fucking, I mean, you might be thinking about Ben Franklin, but you're also thinking about like Beanie and Freeway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I was thinking about Meek Mills, and I'm thinking, I instantly start thinking about who I can have conversations with about what I'm doing, right? So for me, it's like there's spaces and things that I enter, and I'm instantly like, okay, who can I reach out to? How can I make this happen? But I know, like, I'm gonna be in the room with Hov at some point, and I'm gonna be like, yo,
yeah,
remember that house in that building in Dumbo for $2 million that you could have bought? Like
yeah, no, I mean I think that even past just thinking about all the greats, I think that everybody, even watching somebody like I don't know if you pay attention to what's his name, Jay Morrison, the real estate dude from
Baltimore.
No, he's from Jersey, but he's been on like Breakfast Club and all that stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Or Jay
he's Jersey. I follow him on Instagram.
But then he started the what was it, like the Tulsa Fund, and they just bought a building in Atlanta, like a building they're going to convert into this crazy center.
Wait, is that okay? I don't know. Okay, maybe I don't follow him. I'll check him out.
But it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, like those are the moves.
Yeah,
and like, they can happen.
This simultaneously, I think that simultaneously as that's happening, we need to be developing apps that basically create these, and I have to figure out how to manage that, like what that means for the SEC and all those things, because I want to be able to create an app that costs $2,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying, or $3 a year, or $3 a month, and within the app there's a bunch of information, bunch of real estate information, but that money that you bought the app goes into this pot that creates, that creates wealth building and purchasing power, and puts, makes people investors. It essentially makes people investors without them even.
I mean, it could definitely be something with in-app purchases or whatever that figure those,
because these are the, like, I think I know how to do it. I think I know how to do it.
I think you make a crazy version of like a sim app.
Yeah. Stop talking, because I know how to do it. And like, I'll talk to you off camera about it. I've written a lot about it, but it's just a matter of like someone who I trust actually doing it, like creating it. But for me, it's more, I think that it has to be through the space of gaming and, real-time wins and in-app purchases and things that, as you are thinking like augmented reality, as you're going around your neighborhood and you're looking at like, oh, this house is for sale, and then you like clack, like boom, like are you gonna be the first to buy it? How are you gonna improve it? Blah blah blah. What are you gonna? And then that in and of itself becoming like, that's the learning ground for house flipping, buying, renting, rehabbing, refinancing. It's burst strategy, that buy, rehab, refinance, rent, refinance. Those strategies, and then who are the wholesalers, who are the commercial buyers. But if it's not in the state of gaming, like, or some sort of like thing that's like easy to play and you can play on it becomes like, oh, this is work. I don't want it to be like, I don't want it to be work.
No, you're right.
I want people to play with it and realize, and I want people to play and watch their money grow. Like, my introduction to the stock market was in like a class where they gave us a little bit of money and we were able to fake invest in companies and play invest. And I fake made some money and was like, oh,
this is fun.
Yeah. And then my introduction to the real stock market was when it collapsed. And I didn't know I still didn't know shit about the stock market, but I was like, I understood by that time, I had understood that societies aren't propagated off of real wealth. They're propagated off of an idea of security. So I was like, if the government's going to invest in bailing out banks, they're not going to let those banks fold, because that is the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen is that people's faith in the government's
Well,
ability to
have
serve
you read
them.
that book right there?
Sapiens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you understand like where all of this is a agreement.
Absolutely.
You know, where
Absolutely.
this is like, you know, and
But
once that agreement falls apart,
Yeah.
we used to have this conversation about like replacing the video game cartridge. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, man, just put a new one in. Just change that shit up. Like it you know, at any point you can just be like, oh yeah, no, that one's done.
Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, I'm done. So
No, I mean, and that's how I changed my whole life. Was every single time I wanted to just shift, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not doing that way anymore. I'm just doing something else. And overcoming inertia is difficult for a lot of people, right? Like you're spinning, the centrifugal force of your existence is just like very, very great. But there are always small things that you can do to change your shit. Like getting up earlier is like an easy like change. Brushing your teeth as soon as you get up changes everything because it actually like a shock to your system. So like it's much harder to go back into like sleep mode or low key relax mode once you fucking brush your teeth. You feel like, okay, I did that one thing that is like, well, now I'm supposed to like do stuff, right? Because my teeth are brushed. You know, like it's those little things that change the pattern of how you maneuver. You know, set spaces where your routines change. So it's like if you're gonna meditate, don't do it in your bed.
Yeah,
like
just gonna sleep
you know,
in your bed.
do it somewhere else. So because your bed is associated with sleep and you know, and probably Netflix and masturbation. So don't like fucking do it there, right? Like do it somewhere else. Create a space for that. Create a space for reading. Create a space. Like if I showed you my my calendar, my alarms go off all day long because I have like every hour I have like I'm like, okay, read real estate books. Now like check in with the cafe, call my partners. You know, and it doesn't mean that I'm actually going to be on the phone for an hour with them or talking to them. It's just like a check-in and just saying like, hey, what's good? Where's everything at? Where are we? You know, what are we working on? Blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter what it is. I just plug something new into it. Right now, though, obviously I'm only reading business applicable books right now, just because I've read.
I think that at the end of the day, everyone, if they want to, can always probably do more, not necessarily by an increased amount of ridiculous effort, as much as just like scheduling better and figuring out better routines within the space that they have. You know, that hour that you just spent lost in YouTube videos, if you change the kind of videos that you were looking at and you're looking at, you know, whether it be real estate videos or whether it be how to on whatever you want to do, it's going to be much more effective and much more beneficial for you when all that shit is said and done. But I feel like we should wrap it right now.
Absolutely. Check out the economic empowerment zones that Trump has put into play, because he did that for rich white people, but anybody can get involved. So.
Let's wrap this shit. Thank you for coming, being on the first one.
Let's do it again. Yeah. I hope I could be a returning regular guest.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap, Rizzy.